Here it is, boys and girls. Webbot for report summary for February 2016. For my new subscribers, if you're wondering what a Webbot report is, it essentially is these little spiders, these programs that run around the internet looking for what I like to call high-profile keywords that are not normally used in normal language, don't belong in a conversation on that particular page or sentence, etc., and kind of stand out like a sore thumb. And if it gets enough hits from different places all over the world, including different languages, it brings it back to Cliff High, who owns this program, and kind of stores it in a database where he can then determine if it's going to be added to his report, which then he has to essentially decipher and interpret into readable paragraphs for the rest of us. Sometimes it has a scary, accurate ability, I should say. Sometimes it's got misses, but it certainly is better than chance, which means it can't be, again, by chance. It can't be just pure luck that it gets stuff right. You may hear me talk about summer or this year or whatever, and I will tell you now that many times the days come and go, nothing happens, you think it's a miss, and then a year or even two later, bang, there it is. Timing was off, but it was a spectacular, perfectly written, interpreted hit. Other times, date, time, event, spectacular hit, right on the money, all three, bang. There was a recent one I just did, a report where I said, hey, spectacular Webbot hit, just a few videos ago. From one of the, not the last report, it may have been the one just before that. Actually, I think it was the December report that it you know, had something that stood right out, like, oh my gosh, this is what he was talking about, he nailed it. The Zika virus. He said then, in the December report, there's going to be a new, like, bird flu pandemic, swine flu, all that crap, like we keep having with the measles, and what was the other one, Ebola, and they were all nonsense. He said there's going to be another one, so get ready for it, it's going to be here soon. And sure enough, we're dealing with this Zika virus nonsense. That's an unbelievable hit, by the way, for him to say that, and then it happens exactly when he's, you know, time frame he says. So, having said that, read through this report yesterday, and again, just like the previous report, things ain't looking too good for the future of us humans. Considering that not everything in this report will be right, just like not everything in the last part will be right, even a small percentage of things being right in that report and this report I'm about to read you, which again, this is just a summary, I've got to say, not really looking too good, but you got to look at it this way. Whatever the hell's coming, this big economic collapse worldwide that's going to devastate people, including Americans, especially those who aren't prepared, it has to happen to get to the next step. And I think he mentioned something like that actually in here, where, like, whatever happens next, we got to get through this. So it's going to come. It's not going to take too long. It'll be here shortly. We're going to have to deal with it. It doesn't get dealt with peacefully and nicely, as they never do throughout history. Violence is always a response by the people, even, and of course even more so by the government, which then riles up the people to get even more violent, and next thing you know, you have a freaking revolution or something. So, he's titling this report, Crash Map March 2016. On the first topic, which again, I'll read these and keep going, and you may not know, you're thinking I'm like reading from a book, where it would normally be in order, but I skip around when I do these summaries, so I may have missed a page or two or three or four and just want to read one paragraph out of an entire page that was 5 pages later. Okay? So it may not necessarily make sense, but I'm going to keep reading it, so just bear with me. I got to get going on this. Metadata topic. In our work here at Half Past Human, and again, I'm going to tell you where to buy this report if you want the full report. I'm going to suggest again that you get this, because there was a lot of stuff I kept. Let me add that. Now let me take that back out. I don't want this thing to be too long, because I can't sit here and read you his whole freaking report for free. So he allows me to do a summary with his permission. So I found myself, let me add that. No, let me take that back out. That's not as important as this one, but I want to keep that. But like, I want to mention more than I can. But again, at the end of the day, for $15 at halfpasthuman.com, you can get the report yourself. And this last one and this one are I think, keepers. If you know what I mean. In our work here at Half Past Human, we use the term meta in its meaning of beyond, or the next level up from. And as such, our metadata discussion is focused on the larger meanings expressed in the patterns of the data as it accrues, rather than the data itself. In this instance, the data meaning came actually crashing out at us from the word frequency of crash and its many variants arising in the data. Now note, we do not sweep up and use conscious discussions from the internet, only the variation in language from the established pattern type within that domain of knowledge, i.e. words normally not found in that form of discussion, such as battleship, showing up in a gardening forum on Zinnias and not referring to a label or name. So given the repeated references to crash and crashing systems within the data, it naturally flowed to produce this crash map for 2016, in which our data sets are directing attention to specific demonstrations from universe of the crash idea as a necessary step on the path to what comes next. Certain to come next, at least as a main component, is, as the data is forecasting, the extensive use of the word rationing. Expect to see various forms of the word work its way into daily use over this year, especially within the dollar empire. As this dollar-based empire crashes, the rationing is showing as being applied to silver coins, and gold allocations, and medicines, and electricity, and hundreds of food items, as well as strategic industrial products. The data is indicating that most of the rationing language will become North America, including Canada and Mexico, and Europe zone, focused over late 2016 and into 2017. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single one of those words will be here in late 2016, but I think some of them will be. I've already seen silver coins rationed by the U.S. Mint, which, again, by law, they're supposed to have enough supply of coins to meet public demand at all times, and they fail, and then they fail again, and they fail again, and they've got to ration how many the primary dealers can get, etc. At the same time, all countries right now against the U.S. dollar, their currency against ours, are collapsing miserably. Canada recently was down to 70 cents to our dollar, when it used to be pretty even, 1-to-1. At one point, their dollar was a little bit more valuable than our dollar, $1.07, etc. I was like, what? The Canadian dollar's more stronger than ours? What the? Now it's like 70 cents. Venezuela, Brazil, even Russia, all of them, not looking good in our dollar. And I keep doing these videos saying, look, if you had gold and silver coins purchased just a little while ago, and now their country's dollar is devaluing against ours big time, guess how much value your gold and silver just added to your net worth? Pretty significant in some countries. Not doing anything. The same gold is still sitting in your safe that was 2 years ago. It's there now. Holy crap, it's worth a whole lot more. Yet the price of gold and silver have been held down for all this time, and still held down in America, because that's where we set the price. So those countries, I'm sure you're going to be hearing the word rationing, etc. And since Mexico is considered part of North America in his report here, where he says Mexico America, Canada, etc. I'm pretty certain out of who's going to get hurt the worst, Mexico. And of course, as I said, Canada's already hurting now because 70 cents to our dollar, anything that they've been importing from us, ooh, painful. Hence, and then you have, well, we're going to have to ration certain things. That's how that usually goes. At the same time, when there's shortages, that also means rationing. Terra entity. The Terra entity is indicating that once again there will be a weather dichotomy through, or not B-A, but B, weather dichotomy throughout 2016. The hot and deadly summer in parts of the northern hemisphere will be used as a rallying cry by the warmists, aka global warming religion adherents, but it will be juxtaposed against abnormal and extraordinary cold phases in the middle of blazing hot summer affecting other areas. The west coast of North America is showing as being within the abnormally hot zone for most of 2016 and 2017 until the earthquake period in mid-2017. It's been a while since Webbot has talked about earthquake stuff. So now earthquake is in the radar for mid-2017. Coincident to the earthquakes, the heat zone will break on the west coast. The data sets are showing that the hot summer all along the west coast, even into Alaska and the Arctic, will be both setting records and killing people and wildlife. In spite of the take it to heart attitude of the warmists, the heat zone is showing as a temporary and an actual prelude to a decade of the coldest winters since seen for centuries. However, in 2016, the heat is indicated to be brutal and scorching to the extent that much of the mainstream media over summer will be spending time speculating about the weather. In several sets are new linguistic structures for airplane crashes or aborted takeoffs that will be due to heat problems. Other heat-related sets show that airplanes are grounded due to heat problems on the roads. So that would almost tell me that runways, that tarmac, the dark-colored, essentially roadway, or, tarmac, again, that planes take off on, are going to be getting so hot that it might actually soften the tires too much on these planes, and maybe that becomes a concern. That will cause the fueling system. Okay, so other heat-related sets show that airplanes are grounded due to heat problems on roads that will cause the fueling system to crash and be unable to meet responsibilities. So actually, maybe I need to take that back, actually, because that sounds like these electronic fueling systems. They pull up and hook the hoses up, go to turn it on, and it's so hot outside that the electronics inside the machine that would normally get the pumps going to fuel the plane are having problems. That's what that sounds like to me. While it will be the heat index numbers that will be continuously used and displayed on the media for the West Coast, it will be the hospitalization rates that will be gripping the attention of the rest of the continent and world as hospitals and cooling centers become first line of defense in the hot and deadly summer of 2016. The new data sets are suggesting that videos of crowded hospitals will be a recurring image on the mainstream media news over 2016 as the strains on the USA pop and Canada pop are exposed in the crashing breakdown of the healthcare system in its first ever real test of its capabilities. Global pop entity. It is forecasting that the speed of the financial collapse will shock the global population. This speed is going to be so shocking and so mind-numbingly fast that it will form a part of the discussion that comes boiling up as system after system go parabolic, and in some cases the data is forecasting the damage to be irreversible only seconds after the effect or event, such as like algorithms get screwed by circuitous data loops, and yet minutes before humans even become aware that their company, future, market, government just ate all of its own tail. In recurring themes that spread across the dollar-denominated or dominated part of the world, the data is showing that the loss of rule of law becomes so commonly discussed as to break down the last vestiges of respect for the workers in the courts/law system. The datasets are forecasting situations of mobs chasing judges and lawyers who will be fleeing as they had represented the corporations and/or government/officialdom in a way that deeply impacts local situations. What is being described as overtaking the American/Anglo financial empire is the loss of conditioned mental authority of the legal system and all its agents. The data is specifically referencing incidents that will arise in such numbers that even TV, aka Hollywood mind control machine, will be forced to react with counter-situational programming that will vainly try to protect judges, lawyers at all, as good guys. Part of their problem, TV land, will be that the data is forecasting a daily flood of people versus the establishment at such levels as to swamp any propaganda attempt. While focused on the American Anglo Empire, the data shows that such or similar situations will be affecting large areas of Europe and South America, especially Brazil, though there are cadre of judges, a cadre of judges is showing as bringing trust of the people to their process. In other areas of support for the breakdown of social contract, we find the new detail sets forecasting raids on government installations where foods and other stores are held by local populations who will be disguising themselves as terrorists or other enemies in a direct emulation of how the powers that be conduct false flags. The data shows that some of these raids are going to be spectacular, as populations will be liberating food by the ton from officialdom warehouses, and in other cases absconding with vital records as a side effect of the raid, which will then be posted online, causing huge damage to the political establishment within that country, and he says EU somewhere most likely. Some of the other raids will include raids on large religious/church compounds by governments for a wide variety of reasons, from wealth seizure to hunting fugitives. In this last case, the data suggests that the government involved will be so out of control and out of touch that it will be bombing wrecked/abandoned cargo ships, sea markets entity, attempting to destroy the raiders who will be presumed to be among the people living in the wrecks. Within the global pop entity, no subset has a greater, more imminent response and reaction linguistic structure developing than that of the Italy pop. And again, this is a small piece I had to pull from the Italy pop. There's more on this, but I really like to focus on the USA pop and the markets entity, so I leave a lot of stuff out. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff in this report. As forecast so long ago, Alta reports from like 2006 and 7, the data sets are showing, and again Alta reports, the Webbot report, data sets are growing in the food riots, again, spill over into Vatican archives buildings, and hidden secrets are revealed as the mob loots the stored treasures. This will be a very large temporal marker indeed, and every indication within the data accretion patterns are pointing towards later in 2016. Again, I can't sit here and tell you that I really think this is going to happen in late 2016 already. So I don't hold my breath sometimes on some of these dates that are forecast, but I do hold my breath on what he's saying, because many times it's going to happen even if the date's wrong. I've seen it too many times. The food riots within Italy pop are likely going to be called something else initially, and that is most likely some label associated with pensions and or corruption. In the propaganda media, the actual cause will only be discussed locally, where the shock of the incoming hyperinflation will not be able to be denied. Note that the data sets have a number of personalities emerging from this new Popular Front movement that will grow from the grasses on the dunes and begin to assert popular opinion onto the Italian political landscape. These new personalities are forecast to include some very technology-savvy people who are indicated to go globally viral with a dissection of the mainstream media control techniques in a near real-time fashion. From the data sets, the impression emerges of a mirroring of the mainstream media by these enterprising young Italians, though several are very old, and are the steering committee, then a contrast and compare to actual street events. The data sets are showing that the Italian street kids will be copied globally for their template of innovation. China pop. The data sets are showing that the forecast capital control police actions in China are going to grow substantially over this next year. The previously forecast seizure of foreign deeded property by the Chinese state apparatus has now had new growth in its supporting sets, with much of that being from immediacy value types, indicating a near-term appearance of the escalations by the state in its search for stolen revenue. And the last few reports we're talking about that were that corruption, fraud in China, they had to do something with their money, so they came to like America or anywhere other than China, bought a bunch of real estate, bought a bunch of property, didn't care what the price was. They needed somewhere to put their money, essentially, their wealth, but their wealth was gotten from ill-gotten gains, so now the Chinese state, the country, is now going after them. Oh, you've got property in America or over here? Okay, well, guess what? That's ours now. We're seizing it. That's what they're talking about. And I just read an article the other day how some very, very wealthy Chinese people came into a town somewhere in Canada, bought houses way overpriced, resold them to other Chinese people, again, the ones who were probably trying to funnel some money around, for even more money, and then they sat there and no one ever lived in them, and they're like rotting. I'm talking multi-million-dollar homes rotting. And the people who live around there are saying, hey, you're killing the community, you're killing our own home prices, what do you do, what's going on here? Fix these houses up. And the Chinese had no intention whatsoever of ever even living in these houses, I guess. They felt like we'll just leave it, we'll buy them and maybe flip them or something later, but they needed a place to put some wealth, some of their money into, and that was their process. Maybe they got stopped at some point and that's where it sat, I don't know. But I just read that. New supporting sets within Capital Control's police are now also indicating that many, perhaps even thousands of new schemes will be unraveling as the Chinese economy contracts. As a natural part of depression economics, fraud schemes are revealed as the funds flows dry up. The recent exposure of the national Ponzi scheme in China is but the latest in what will become a flood of crime revelations by midsummer. The data sets are showing that the problems with unregulated finance will become so acute that the Chinese leadership will be trying to cope with daily riots on a scale not before seen. USA pop. The data sets are forecasting that the USA population is going to go through hell over these next 4 years. The passage into hell begins in March and April as 2 months of currency wobble are showing as initiating vast pent-up social energy releases. The social energy releases are showing as being reactions to a sudden and severe impact on prices and availability of almost all goods. The crashing of the global financial system is indicated to change USA pop overnight. In some cases, many will be partying due to the perceived liberation from debt. That's an interesting way. They're partying due to perceived liberation from debt. Lots of student debt slaves as an example. While in other cases, there will be suicides, both willing and unwilling or unwitting, as the financial system wastage almost instantly begins, revealing massive frauds that will reach up high into political/corporate organizations. This causes partying of another sort, as the enemies of the compromised politicians will be thrilled until they too are caught out by funding/finance problems. The continental U.S. has numerous new sets growing in support of diaspora of the population, as both earth expansion effects, earthquakes, methane leak, water, will pile on to the unfolding economic chaos, as distribution system failures will further pressurize the situation nationally. These many effects are showing as also pushing up on political parties as their demographic bases, congressional districts, become either bereft of voters or overwhelmed by refugees to the point that local political systems break down. The refugees language in these sets refer to near-state neighbors who will be forced out by unfavorable circumstances of earth expansion or nuclear radiation or other man-made disasters. Note that this Last is indicating that several new and very widespread cases of water poisoning will be making headlines soon in new areas of the country, one of which will have had the potential to have spread the contamination nationwide. As the banking system comes unglued, the population is showing as reacting badly. That's a shocker. And being video recorded as they are acting badly. The details have death machines that will be on video showing Americans fighting over and with ATM machines as banks are closing. The data sets here are not suggesting a national bank holiday so much as they are referring to mid-tier banks that will succumb to near instant insolvency. This is showing as being so prevalent within some states that nearly all non-major banks are wiped out statewide. This is showing as being so prevalent within some states that nearly all non-major banks are wiped out statewide. So the too big to fail banks may not be wiped out, or even some other well-known banks. That's interesting. I mean, it's not interesting that the too big to fail banks wouldn't be wiped out, but the fact that nearly all non-major banks are wiped out statewide, does that imply like credit unions, or, it's hard to say. The hyperinflation set held by the USA POP entities shows that the first encounter with rapidly rising, and he says domestic equals in this instance meaning all things to do with home prices locally, I guess. Not home as in real estate. Will be initially felt along the border regions in April. While the officialdom response that confirms the hyperinflation is not forecast to appear until July, the data sets grow for cross-border hyperinflation to be discussed before mid-April. In this context, the cross-border seems to be initially focused on ports of entry. Then the context shifts towards state-to-state borders. These sets are showing large convoys of frightened shoppers who will band together for cross-state shopping expeditions as the prices locally will be getting out of control. Other sets within this structure are showing that availability will be also be a motivating factor as imports wither to nothing in a period so short as to be shocking. More mundane forms of crash will be seen in 2016 as the extremes of climate weather will be shown as the cause for the breakdown of long stretches of roadway. In these sets, the descriptors indicate that the heat will have so softened the road surfaces as to cause officialdom to forbid passage due to long-lasting damage to the road itself. They, the local officialdom, will apparently discover the problem after the stranding of drivers as their vehicles melt into the roadway surface. The supporting sets are filled with tires popping language, though it must be noted that this seems to be more of a generalized effect as the geographic references are wide and dispersed throughout the southwest USA. Much of the new growth would be suggesting that it will be summer riots and thirsty, hungry, hot, sweaty mobs who will be causing the breakdown of the policy enforcement structure, aka police. These hungry mobs have been shown in data since 2003, with sets from 2006 indicating that in 2 instances of food riots, the spillovers will be into military intelligence compounds, as the mobs will be tearing down the back fences of military installations under the groupthink of food behind the security fences. I've got more, but I'm reading a lot. Let's see how much do I got actually. Actually, I've got one more page after this. Yeah, we'll be okay. Actually, I've got 2 pages. Yeah, and I've already been speaking long enough. I'm gonna just cut to markets for a second. Both the immediacy and shorter term data sets are showing that a rush upward in the dollar price for Bitcoin will be part of the forecast March through April financial system dysfunction crash. There are data sets with a bespoke $1,045 as the purchase price for Bitcoin before the hyperinflation word gains its serious growth in mid-July. So that's interesting. Although mostly based in the U.S. pop entity, the price control subset also has a large set within the markets entity and is indicated by the data sets to first appear as a market disturbance, which will be derivatives related and then result in government imposition of price controls. As model spaces progress through summer, northern hemisphere, the data sets are indicating that the state and local governments of all the major national sovereign unions will be desperate for cash and funding for their employees and operating costs. And as a result, the data suggests that state and local government at all levels will be raping the people through taxation. The data sets are showing that taxes in jurisdictions such as high-value Florida real estate will be raised so high as to eclipse the cost of selling the properties. For clarity, the taxes are not going to be more than the property is worth, but they will be very much more than all the other costs of selling combined by several orders of magnitude. The data sets are forecasting that in some jurisdictions, the discrepancy between taxation amounts and nominal market value will be so high as to have the local population in active tax revolt, and including withholding payments en masse by the end of 2016. In the cases forecast for Florida and New York City and other areas in Southern California, the data shows language as in punishing and brutal applied to tax levels. There are detailed layers showing that some luxury apartments, views and all, will be abandoned, many already empty most of the year, as their foreign owners will be refusing to pay the taxes. The data suggests we will be seeing squatters in high-rise abandoned apartments. These new occupiers and their activities will not sit well with the paying residents, and bad behavior will result that will make it out to video. In the final paragraph, the data sets for both silver and gold continue to gain new values for shortages. These shortages are also showing new supporting sets for crashing dealer system within the Western markets. The crash language in these sets contain details that go to the idea of open auctions for gold in which Asian interests will dominate by way of a dollar flood and end up taking all the metals. The data continues to show that time of no offer is coming during the process of the dollar wobble, which leads up to hyperinflation of midsummer northern hemisphere. And there was another piece in here I didn't include that talked about car dealerships. Epic failures coming like you can't even imagine. But again, I've actually had to cut short on this because I've been doing it. I've spent too much time on it. So I'm going to suggest you get this one and read the full thing yourself, because there's a lot of stuff I left out that I'm certain most of you will find interesting, informative. So, gotta run. That's it. Take care.